The date is February 27th, 2019, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm sitting in a car park in the middle of the English Peak District, watching the Pokemon Day announcement with a terrible mobile internet connection as the 8th generation is officially revealed for the very first time. While it wasn't explicitly stated, the distinct landscapes and architecture make it abundantly clear that this new region is going to be based on none other than the United Kingdom. To see my own country represented within the world of Pokemon is like a dream come true, and I couldn't wait to explore it. But shortly afterwards, it was revealed that something huge was missing. The fans were immediately in uproar and took to social media to demand answers, forming a campaign that threatened to boycott Sword and Shield unless Game Freak could answer one simple question. Where is Wales? I mean, seriously, where is it? I cannot believe they looked at a beautiful country covered in castles and mountains with a literal dragon on its flag and said, hey, let's just not do anything with this untapped goldmine of culture and mythology. They made an entire DLC out of the Isle of Man. Do you know how big the Isle of Man actually is? It's 10 miles wide and like 5 people live there. What the actual All jokes aside, it's hard to deny that Sword and Shield relates to a very critical reception. The loss of the national Pokedex was a tough sell for a lot of fans, and admittedly, I didn't even do my first playthrough of Generation 8 until a couple years later. But now, with the exception of only a few mythicals, every single Pokemon can be caught in at least one title on the Switch, which, at least in my opinion, has softened the blow on the loss of the national Dex. But I'm not here to make a negative rant video. If you want to watch one of those, there are literally thousands out there already, and if you look hard enough, you might even find some that actually played the games they're talking about. While it might not be perfect, I honestly enjoyed Pokemon Sword, so I want to go through the Galar region again and give my perspective on it as a British person. And I thought, what better way to do this than a shiny Dream Team quest? As I take you through a fresh playthrough of Pokemon Shield, I want to share my honest opinions on Generation 8, as well as providing some context on how the Galar region captures so many aspects of British culture and heritage. And along the way, I'll be hunting for a full team of shiny Pokemon with varying levels of Welsh connection. If you couldn't tell from the intro, I'm from Wales, and if you're not from the UK, this is Wales. I was born in South Wales and I've lived here for my entire life, and while I'm used to Wales having little to no media representation outside of Doctor Who, it still stung to have my home completely sheared off of the map when they created the Galar region. But despite this, there are still several Pokemon that I feel embody the history and spirit of Wales, and they're going to make up most of the Pokemon on my team. While the initial choice of starters are shiny locked, my actual starter is going to be caught just down the road on Route 1. But before we get started on starting the starter hunt, I need to take care of some important prep work. First off, I'm going to Motorstoke to finish customizing my character, as well as making a quick visit to the Crown Tundra to pick up a souvenir from my last Dream Team quest. I'm also going to acquire some luxury balls for style points, and finally, I have to make one last pit stop in the Isle of Armor. While a shiny is still the rarest thing you can hunt for, Generation 8 introduced another random factor that I'm hoping to find. Every Pokemon caught in the wild has a chance to be found with a mark, a cosmetic attribute which allows you to give it a unique title when it gets sent out into battle. The base chance of finding a marked Pokemon is between 5 and 7% depending on weather, or just over 10% if you're fishing. And by visiting the Isle of Armor and showing off my completed Pokedex, I can get my hands on the Mark Charm, which effectively triples your chance of finding a marked Pokemon. So hopefully I can find at least one shiny with a cool mark during this quest. Now that we got all that out of the way, it's time for my first target. I decided that in order to best represent my homeland, my starter has to be Wooloo. Believe it or not, the national animal of Wales is actually the dragon, but if we were forced to choose an animal that currently lives in Wales and also wasn't fictional, there's a good chance it would be the sheep. Around 30% of Britain's sheep population is found in Wales, and there's 3 times as many sheep as there are people. With all of the Wooloo rolling around and the great hills off in the distance, Postwick honestly feels like it could be a town in the heart of the Welsh valleys. This route is also home to Rookidee though, and Corviknight is one of my absolute favourite Pokemon from this generation, so while Wooloo remains the main target, I might not be able to resist running into a few Rookidee. Whoa! That's a shiny Rookidee. Okay. That was a brilliant encounter, right? I don't think I've actually knocked out that many of these. That probably wasn't actually very high odds. That's gonna be like a 2 times shiny rate at best. Oh, but that is awesome though. Okay, I'm stoked about this phase actually. I'm totally fine with that. If I wasn't committed to this whole Welsh theme, I honestly would have been hunting for a Corviknight though. This is like my favorite, like my favorite Gen 8 Pokemon. Okay, I only have 5 luxury balls, but I'm pretty sure the catch rate is pretty decent here. So I should be able to get this without having to damage it. Shiny Rookidee. I did consider at first trying to do both of these and then moving on once I get Wooloo, but I have mostly just been running into Wooloo this whole time. This was honestly kind of just, I saw a sparkly thing and ran towards it because the Brilliant has a slightly higher shiny chance. I'll name you in a second. Yeah, that was a Brilliant one because I got Watts from it. So this is gonna have like an egg move as well. But okay, we also have to check. This could have a mark. That's also very exciting to think about. Okay, what nature am I guessing? I'm gonna say hardy, because why not? This is lonely nature. Okay. And do we have a mark? No marks. Okay. But that is... that is so cool, though. Yeah, Rookidee's relaxing in this familiar place. He recognizes where it was caught. That is crazy, though, because I've maybe only ran into maybe 60 Rookidees while doing this, because I've done the whole 500 KOs for Wooloo, because I was hoping that maybe that would give me a better Brilliant shiny chance. But wow, that is... I was really not expecting that. I'm kind of speechless on this. Regular Wooloo. And there's a shiny Rookidee. Yeah, I'm definitely putting this on the team at least until I get my last member. I can't not use a Corviknight here. Yeah, I only battled 15 of these, so that was only a 2 times shiny rate. So that was 1 in, what, like 2,000 something? So that's still crazy odds. Especially considering I was already under odds as is for a shiny. Also, what move does it have, actually? I forgot to check that. Because it should have, like, an egg move for being a Brilliant Pokemon. Roost, is that the one? Yeah, I think it is Roost, because, yeah, it's already got Power Trip. Cool. Alright, well, back to punting Wooloo. Keep giving me Squobits. There we go. Ooh! Shiny Wooloo! Yes! Oh, that's perfect. Ah, 2,465. That's also pretty under odds, actually. Oh, that is great. Oh, I'm so glad I bothered to scare away those Squobits. Okay, I'm probably just gonna sit here and like look at this for a bit. I love how the camera kind of dynamically moves around, but it does kind of make it hard to actually see the target sometimes. But every now and then you do get some just nice, good close-ups. Yeah, the far out shot is pretty nice too. It is nice how the battlefield is actually like an environment here. Like, it's not the same as the overworld battles from Scarlet and Violet, but it does feel nice actually having a battlefield that represents the exact area that you are. Because you can see the town and like the route sign and everything here. And honestly, this is I kind of prefer this to the way it's done in Scarlet and Violet. It does kind of have the whole scene transition thing that takes a bit of time, but visually I kind of just like this representation more. It feels like the most complete representation of how battles were originally presented, with just two Pokemon in a space fighting. Okay, yeah, let's catch this Wooloo. Please stay in. Yes. Okay, and you are going to be Baldwin. I did actually use a shiny Wooloo on my first playthrough of Sword as well, but it was one that I got traded from Pokemon Home, so it wasn't really my own one. So this is going to be sort of replacing that one. This is my own shiny Wooloo now. What nature is this, and does it have a mark? I really hope it has a mark. I'm gonna guess sassy nature. It's neutral. Quirky, okay. And do we have a mark? No mark. Okay. Well, we've only seen 2 shinies so far. That would have been pretty good odds. So we've still got at least 5 more. I don't think I need to say much more about Wooloo. For all the criticism thrown at Generation 8, I have yet to hear a single bad word about this soft, fluffy, and absurdly round little lamb. A lot of the Pokemon in this early root archetype tend to be overlooked for being too weak or disliked for being too bland, but Wooloo is generally regarded as a fan favourite, and Dubwool is actually pretty strong thanks to Body Press, which pairs very well with its access to Cotton Guard. I'm also very aware that I'm not being original here, because I've seen at least 2 separate playthroughs of Sword and Shield that start with immediately hunting for a shiny Wooloo. While I'm not a big fan of football myself, it's hard to deny that it's a huge part of British culture, and the way they integrate an equivalent of that into the identity of the Galar region is honestly one of my favourite things about any Pokemon region ever. The Pokemon world always talks about battling as a large aspect of its society, and that's never felt more evident than it does in Galar. Every gym battle takes place in a huge stadium packed with roaring fans, which is also a perfect aesthetic match for the region's battle gimmick, since they have to accommodate Pokemon growing over 100 feet tall mid-battle. It also makes sense that powerful trainers are idolised and therefore commercialised in the same way as professional athletes. Leon's cape being covered in sponsorship patches is a great way of demonstrating that, as well as the integration of your trainer card being an actual collectible trading card. During my first playthrough, I had a lot of fun updating and keeping track of my trainer card during my journey, like how real sports cards will be updated over the course of a player's career, and I plan to redesign mine regularly throughout my quest. I'm also just going to come out and say it, if you don't personalise your trainer card and just use the stock profile picture, I refuse to believe that you're a sentient human being with a soul. I don't care how sweaty of a competitive player you are, you can take 2 minutes away from team building to design a trainer card. My only disappointment with this part of the gym challenge is they offer you a wide variety of different uniform designs, but every official league battle makes you wear the default basic one, which really feels like a missed opportunity. It would have been perfect if you could customise your own uniform as you gained more notoriety during the gym challenge, even if it was restricted to only using clothes from the official uniform sets. After completing our gym registration and flexing on our rival with the shiny version of his team, it's time to make our way to Turffield to start our gym challenge, although I have another target that I want to find along the way. Something I briefly want to touch on is some of the ways in which they made the people of the Galar region feel British. Even this early into the game, you can tell they really did their research on the way people talk in the UK, with the occasional use of quaint expressions and dry sarcasm sprinkled in. Sure, it's a little bit exaggerated, but it's not completely over the top either. They even correctly refer to your mother as mum instead of mom. Later in the game, there's also a restaurant called Bob's Your Uncle, which is another very British idiom that I've seen Americans get confused by. There are a few small nitpicks that I could point out, such as the Isle of Armor being spelt without a U, and the dex entry for Cinderace using the word soccer instead of football feels particularly egregious, but I'll let it slide. This detail also extends to the assortment of trainer classes that were chosen for the Galar population. Obviously, there are several staples that appear in almost every Pokemon game, like hikers, schoolchildren, police officers, and fishermen. But notably, several have been redesigned in ways that feel authentically British. The collared shirt with a bright jumper worn by the schoolboys and schoolgirls is a very typical school uniform in the UK, and some high schools expect you to wear ties and blazers much like the last trainers do. The police officers are also dressed in black vests and hats instead of navy blue, to better represent the look of a British bobby, and possibly also to not get them confused with the new postman class. Interestingly, there are only 2 of these trainers in the entire region, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Postman Tad here on Route 3 is named in reference to the beloved English children's show Postman Pat. Speaking of Route 3, this is also where I'm going to be catching my second official team member, as just outside of the entrance to the Galar mine we can find a patch of grass containing plenty of roly-poly. This is another Pokemon that feels extremely Welsh to me. Coal is an abundant resource in Wales, although for the longest time it wasn't very profitable to mine as opposed to metals like gold, lead and iron. But when demand for coal skyrocketed during the Industrial Revolution, Wales found itself in a very good position. Cardiff soon became the biggest port for coal in the world, and here at the Coal Exchange it would be bought and traded in vast quantities. Welsh coal soon came to be known as the best and highest quality fuel for steam power, and allegedly the world's first £1 million deal was brokered here. Ooh! Shiny Roly-Poly! Oh, I think that was a brilliant one. I was kind of half paying attention to that. I was watching the new Poseidon Johto challenge right now. Oh, that is great. Okay. I also do want to just take a second to look at this as well, because I love all these little angles you get. I see people saying that shiny Roly-Poly is meant to look like charcoal ash, but to me it also kind of makes me think of like diamonds, because I know that's kind of a common belief or misconception that diamonds are made out of compressed coal. So it does kind of have that sort of bluish cartoon diamond look to it. Okay, getting a brilliant one is also exciting because this is going to have an egg move, and I'm not actually sure what egg moves Roly-Poly can have. Actually, I should probably look that up in case it has a chance of knocking itself out. I should probably ruin that surprise for me. Hang on. Okay. This could be really bad, actually. So apparently, by breeding with Gigalith, Garbodor, and Ferrothorn, Roly-Poly can learn Explosion. Oh no, I did not think of this. Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. Okay. There is a chance it has Explosion, but there's also a chance that it doesn't. As far as I can tell, Brilliant Pokemon have an egg move completely at random. And there are 2 other possible egg moves that it could have. So this isn't a confirmed chance that it's going to blow up on me. So if it does have Explosion, and I use False Swipe and it explodes now, I've lost it. If it does have Explosion, and I throw the ball now, I have a 70% chance to catch it now, and then another 70% chance if it breaks out, before it gets a second chance to use Explosion. I've just got to throw the ball. I don't have anything better than a Luxury Ball to throw it in, so I might as well throw the Luxury Ball. Okay. Please stay in. Come on. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I genuinely did not know that it could have Explosion as an egg move. That was actually so scary. Okay. Oh, my heart's going crazy. Okay, I had a name already planned out for this, based on both a mining town for coal and where the first recorded use of a coal steam train was ever tested. So this name already works for what Roly-Poly is, but it's also the Welsh word for martyr, as it comes from Merthyr Tydfil. So the fact that it could have exploded on me kind of also adds another layer to this name, so I'm happy with that. What nature could this be? What's a fitting nature of Pokemon that could have exploded on me? Let's just say bold. And does this have a mark? It's another neutral nature. Are you quirky as well? Okay, that's block. It wasn't Explosion. Okay. Serious nature. Okay. And do we have a mark? Please have a mark. No marks. Well, that was another pretty under-odds hunt, actually. But also, of course, because this one's a brilliant one, it wasn't actually full odds in that same sense. After seeing how long it took me to do 500 KOs on Wooloo, I decided this time around I was just going to do 100, because that maxes out the chance for a brilliant Pokemon appearing, and it gets you about 4 times shiny odds, I think. Whereas if I went for another 400 KOs, that would only increase my shiny chance by another, like, 3 rolls. Okay. Well, we got Roly-Coly now, so we can actually keep going. I can actually finally go into the mine and get my first badge. Let's go. Of course, the impact of the Industrial Revolution was not all positive, and coal mining was dangerous work rife with exploitation, environmental damage, and child labour. The inclusion of a coal-based Pokemon with the signature ability Steam Engine was definitely done to reference how Britain pioneered the Industrial Revolution, and by proxy, how it was fueled by the work of Welsh coal miners. As we finally get to our first gym battle, I think it's worth giving my overall thoughts on the Dynamax Phenomenon. While I initially wasn't a big fan of Dynamax, I have to admit that it grew on me. Both puns intended. The way I see it, Dynamax tried to exist as a middle ground between the 2 battle gimmicks that came before it, Mega Evolution and Z-moves. Mega Evolution was extremely powerful, and entire battles would revolve around the designated Mega, but only certain Pokemon could Mega Evolve, meaning every competitive team was going to feature one of a small selection of viable Megas. On the other hand, Z-moves were a lot more versatile and unpredictable, since any Pokemon can use them, but they only got to activate once per battle, and if your opponent predicts your attack and switches out, you might end up wasting your one shot. Dynamax strikes a balance between these 2 ideas. It's even more versatile than Z-moves, since you don't need to decide in advance which Pokemon in your team is going to Dynamax. And much like Mega Evolution, Dynamax Pokemon command complete control over the field. But unlike Megas, each Dynamax only lasts for 3 consecutive rounds, meaning you need to think very carefully about when to use it. These observations are mostly in regards to competitive balance though. From a more casual perspective, I can see why some people weren't fans of it. After all, the main takeaway from Dynamax is that your Pokemon just gets really big. Gigantamax forms do evoke some of the cool transformative aspects of Mega Evolution, but it's also mostly a cosmetic change, and they otherwise function exactly like Dynamax, with the only distinction being access to a move with an exclusive effect. The distribution of Gmax forms also felt a bit unfair, since the ones that weren't given to Galarian Pokemon were almost exclusively distributed to Kanto Pokemon, including several that already had Mega Evolutions. Compared to Megas, there's also less room to interpret your own concepts. Gigantamax Pokemon all seem to rely on emphasizing size. Gigantamax Eevee has a big mane, Cinderace has a big ball, Corviknight and Butterfree have big wings, and so on. And I think this might be why they didn't connect as well with the fanbase. It's easy to imagine a Mega Evolved Pokemon in almost any situation if you're making fan art or writing stories, but a Gigantamax Pokemon only exists in the context of a Galarian Stadium or a Dynamax raid. It also doesn't help that these Gigantamax forms aren't very accessible during a playthrough. Colossal is one of the Pokemon that gets a Gigantamax form, but only if you catch one from the rare Gigantamax raids, meaning I wouldn't be able to see this form with my shiny Roly-Coly. Thankfully, the Isle of Armor added the ability to give the Gmax factor to any compatible Pokemon, but we'll touch on that later. For my next target, I'm going to have to move over to my copy of Sword, because this team would not be complete without catching the most Welsh-coded Pokemon ever made. Wales has many different symbols that represent it. The flag is of course the most prominent, as well as the daffodil, the love spoon, and the traditional woman's hat. But the official national emblem is actually the leek, thanks to its association with a few figures from Welsh history. One legend states that the Welsh king Cadwaladr made his soldiers wear leeks to identify themselves when fighting the Saxons. And what better way to represent that legend than with a Pokemon that literally wields a leek into battle as a weapon? Regional forms were first introduced in Generation 7, and explored the concept of existing Pokemon adapting to various environmental factors like different climates and predators. And in Galar, several more regional forms were discovered, with the Sword-exclusive Farfetch'd having adapted to the presence of larger flora. Spring onions in Japanese media are often translated or localized as leeks, but actual leeks are much larger and sturdier than spring onions, and the weight difference between these two forms seems to imply that Galarian leeks weigh almost 30 kilograms, so it makes sense that Farfetch'd in Galar would get stronger by carrying them around as weapons. Farfetch'd is also a rare spawn here on Route 5, but since this hunt will be taking place on my completed copy of Swords, I also have access to the shiny charm for this hunt to hopefully balance it out. Oh, is that shiny? Yes! Shiny Farfetch'd. Okay, that wasn't as bad as I was thinking it would be. That was quite a slow overall encounters, but that was only 551, so that's pretty good. I was also kind of worried about not noticing it, because this first form at least is kind of subtle. But no, I clocked that immediately. I did have a few times where I wasn't 100% certain when I saw something, but yeah, this is pretty clearly shiny. Nice. Alright, now, once again, time for a mark check and a nature check. I'm gonna guess adamant. Oh, and it's holding a leak. That's handy, actually. Another neutral nature. Wow, what's happening? Are you quirky? Or is this another serious one? Serious. Okay. Likes a fight. That makes sense. And do we have a mark? Please have a mark. No marks. Well, I suppose we're still... I mean, the marks are still pretty rare, even with the mark charm. I still do hope we get one. We've still got at least 3 more checks to go for the rest of this team. So there is still hope. Also, wait, actually, hang on. I just checked this, but apparently holding leak is only a 5% chance. That's crazy. That is like actually, I think, rarer than having a mark in this circumstance. Okay, but it actually is crazy that it's holding a leak. Because that is the entire reason I was hunting this, because of the whole Welsh connection with, you know, soldiers holding leaks and stuff. That's just like fated. That's crazy. It is just kind of setting in for me, like, the odds of that being so directly connected to the entire reason I'm hunting it. That's honestly cooler than a mark, actually. The idea of regional Pokemon felt like it was made specifically for Alola, given that Sun and Moon was heavily focused on the concept of the ecosystem, but I'm glad they've continued to make new ones for each new region. Sword and Shield even introduced the concept of some regional Pokemon having such distinct evolutions that they qualify as new species. Instead of evolving into a new regional form of Persian, Galarian Meowth instead evolves into a new Pokemon, Berserker. Several Galarian regionals even get further evolutions than their counterparts do, as while Kanto Farfetch'd is unable to evolve, Galarian Farfetch'd have the potential to become Surfetch'd. While some of the Welsh parallels I'm making in this video are admittedly tenuous or obscure, I honestly think Surfetch'd might genuinely have been inspired by Welsh history. According to Bulbapedia, Surfetch'd is supposedly referencing Sir Lancelot, who was known as the White Knight, and the Lancelot is also a common variety of leek grown in the UK. But aside from being a knight with a leek, this evolution also has an extra layer of Welsh association. The other Welsh figure connected to leeks is the patron saint of Wales, St David, who is most often depicted with a white bird upon his shoulder. So perhaps Surfetch'd really is an intentional connection to Wales. The yellow of its shiny colour even evokes the colour of the daffodil, another symbol of Welsh heritage that also comes into bloom around St David's Day. That detail might seem like a bit of a stretch, but the Welsh name for the daffodil actually translates to Peter's leek. With our first 3 badges down, we graduate from the minor division of the gym challenge and head back into the wild area to continue our journey. This is also where I want to catch my next team member, and the next topic I wanted to talk about. One of the main critiques I saw prior to the release of Sword and Shield was aimed at the graphics, but in hindsight it was almost entirely aimed at the wild area. Or, more specifically, the tree. Leading up to the release of Sword and Shield, you could not escape people making fun of this tree. And to be fair, it's not great. It also doesn't help that the berry trees feel like they were made in a completely different art style, or that the size of the wild area only serves to expose the limitations of the game engine. In my opinion, the wild area suffers from being experimental. This is the first time you've been given complete freedom to control the camera in a Pokemon game, and the wild area had to be designed to accommodate that, so the trees and other decorations are placed sparingly to avoid obstructing your view. The entrance of the wild area also gives you a direct line of sight to Motorstoke to show where you need to go next, as well as keeping it visible from most parts of the southern area so you can explore freely without getting disoriented. In those regards, these design choices make a lot of sense, but unfortunately it makes the first half of the wild area feel pretty flat and sparse, and since the wild area was promoted as one of the key features of Generation 8, I can understand why it left a bad first impression on people, especially when Breath of the Wild set a pretty high bar for comparison when discussing the potential of the hardware. But I think this focus on the wild area distracts people from actually looking at the rest of the region. The free-moving camera of the wild area means everything inside it could be viewed from every conceivable angle, but evidently, Game Freak specialise in designing their locations with a fixed viewpoint in mind, which is how they've done it for every game previously. Despite being modelled in 3D, the Generation 4 games are exclusively designed to be viewed from that one very specific angle. The trees are actually just 2D sprites facing the camera, and the buildings aren't even fully modelled since you're never going to see them from behind. And this approach is still how all of the towns and routes beyond the wild area were designed. When they know exactly where the camera is going to be when the player is in any given position, they can then fill that frame accordingly. I plan to talk more about the towns and their aesthetics later, but I really do feel like the critique of the wild area overshadowed the rest of Galar's design. The northern half of the wild area is also a much more visually interesting location, as you pass under the aqueduct-style bridges towering overhead to reach the giant stone arch outside of Hammerlock. You can come here as soon as you first access the wild area, but we wouldn't be able to catch much here without the third badge. Speaking of, this badge also gives you a new star on your trainer card, so it's time for a quick card update before our next hunt. As for what we're hunting here, my Welsh team would not be complete without the inclusion of a dragon. I don't think I need to go into much detail for this one. If you know anything about Wales, you know about the flag with the cool dragon on it, which has been used as an emblem as far back as the 7th century. Dragon has also been used as a title to refer to historical Welsh leaders, like Owain Glyndŵr and Llywelyn the Last. Unfortunately, the iconic red dragon doesn't have an equivalent within the Galar Dex. There are several dragon types of course, but none of them quite fit the classical European archetype that's depicted on the Welsh flag. Dragapult and Appleton have no wings, Flapple has no legs, and Duraludon, Regidrago, Dracozolt and Dracovish are way off the mark. Maybe there's another Pokemon in the Galar region that fits this mold that isn't originally from Galar. Surely there's a Pokemon that's inspired by this style of dragon, with 4 limbs, wings and a tail. Maybe one that's also associated with the colour red, and could even be used as a prominent symbol representing someone strong and important within the region. Oh my god, it's Charizard, isn't it? Charizard is the red dragon. I really don't like how much sense that makes to me. Anyway, let's hunt for Applin. Like many dragon types, Applin is a very elusive Pokemon. Unlike the other targets we've hunted so far, Applin doesn't appear as a visible overworld encounter anywhere in the region, only appearing with very low encounter rates in tall grass or by shaking trees in the Isle of Armor. While we could have looked for one on Route 5, our best chance is by using Harvest in Giant's Mirror during a thunderstorm, which gives us about a 65% encounter rate. Oh, okay. That's Shiny Scropy. I think that's one of the rarer ones. Hang on. Yeah, that one's a 20% encounter, but with Harvest active, I think that makes it about 10%. Honestly, this is kind of the last one I wanted to phase on to, honestly, because there's also Machop and Coughing here, which each have their own Galar connections, because we have Galar Weezing and Gigantamax Machamp. And the other one that's slightly more common is Joltik, which is just a cool Gen 5 Pokemon. I can't really think of a way to connect Skorupi or Drapion into the UK, because we don't even have Scorpions here. That's just not a native creature. But I guess that's a phase. All right. I wish Drapion kept this bright red color when it's evolved though, because it does get a bit similar to normal Drapion. I know in like Gen 4 and 5 it was pretty distinct between them, but I think over time they kind of started to creep a bit closer together because normal Drapion got lighter colored as well. Alright, Shiny Skorupi. Would have been nice if it was Applin, but I guess we get another chance to check for a marked shiny. And do we have a mark? Oh, we do. Okay, that's our first marked shiny. It's just the uncommon mark though, so it's nothing too special. Well, that was certainly a long phase. I guess I had it coming because the first 4 were all under odds, so hopefully that balances things out a little bit. This has been a week since I caught Farfetch'd. I think to the day, actually. It was exactly a week ago. So, hopefully the next phase doesn't take as long. Especially because there is still another 33-ish chance of phasing again. But I guess we'll see. As it turns out, I was technically wrong about the UK not having any scorpions. There are no native species, but there are recorded populations of European scorpions living in the dockyards in London and on the Isle of Sheppey, which apparently arrived in the early 19th century on ships coming from Italy. Oh, are you serious? No. No! No! Oh, that's like a 10%. I'm gonna lose it. This is so bad. I'm gonna be hunting this for the rest of my life. 7,021 encounters for a second's 10% Skorupi. I would have preferred anything else in this area. And does it have a mark? I swear if this has a mark. No mark. Okay. Well, that's certainly another phase. Are you kidding me? No. No. What? Why? This is so stupid. This is a 20% encounter, and I'm using Harvest, which forces half encounters to be Applin. So this is effectively 10%. And I've phased on this 3 times in a row. Are you joking? Oh my god. Okay, at least this one wasn't over odds. But I'm still so mad about this. How is it 3 Skorupi? This is just the Woobats all over again. I am in hell. Alright, just get in there. I wonder if this one is also marked as well. What do we got? Okay, bashful nature, and is it marked? Oh, are you kidding me? That's a personality mark. Skorupi the Rampaging. Oh, that is actually a really cool mark. If only that had been Applin, that would have been actually perfect. That would have been such a good thematic mark for the dragon. Ah, why couldn't you have been an Applin? Ah. This sucks. I mean, this is still a really cool Pokemon to have, but it sucks. With the effect of Harvest, Skorupi was effectively a 10% encounter, which means finding 3 phases in a row was a 1 in 1,000 chance. So, while it would reduce the encounter rate of Applin slightly, I decided to move over to the Stony Wilderness, because I don't think I can cope with the chance of finding another shiny Skorupi. Yes! Shiny Applin! Finally! Oh, how many were there? 2,567. Okay. Oh, thank you. I literally just moved specifically so I wouldn't get another Skorupi, but I'm glad I didn't phase on anything else. This has been a rough one. It's been a month since I caught Farfetch'd. We got it. Shiny Applin. Now the question is, did I waste all of my mark luck on the Skorupis? I would so love for this to have a personality mark like that last Skorupi did, but getting 2 personality mark shinies back to back, that's pretty slim odds. But I mean, then again, 3 Skorupis at 10%, that is literally 1 in 1,000, so clearly this is... The luck on this has been very strange, to say the least. So, let's see what we got. Also, I guess nature guess. I'm gonna say... I'm gonna say Hardy. I don't know why, I just got a feeling. Alright. It is... Special attack up, defense down. I think that's mild. Mild, yeah. Likes to run. Okay. And now, do we have a mark? Please have a mark. No mark. Damn. Okay, but we got shiny Applin. That's all that matters. I can finally leave this area and keep going. Let's go. Yeah, I've also got to give this a nickname, and I was thinking about this one for a while because I hadn't fully decided on it when I started hunting. But I've had quite a lot of time to think about it. And I wanted to do a bit of research on Welsh apple varieties, because obviously I'm doing a lot of Welsh-themed names for this team. I wanted to find an apple that is Welsh, green, and sweet. Green, obviously, because that's the shiny colour, and sweet is the apple I'm going to use to evolve it. And there is one apple that meets all of those requirements, but it's called the Morgan Sweet Apple. And if you haven't noticed, that's also my name. So it would basically just feel like I'm naming this apple in after myself, and that feels kind of weird to me, so I'm not going to do that. But I'd find another interesting name option, and that's going to be Bardsey, because apparently there is a variety of apple that was discovered growing from a single tree in the remains of an abbey on an island off the coast of Wales. And that apple has since been cloned from that tree sapling and reproduced and grown more commercially. But it was originated specifically just from a single surviving tree from this old monastery. And I think that's a really cool, like almost mythological concept for a fruit. It also kind of works as well because the concept of bards is also very kind of ingrained in Welsh culture. Because around the 1st of March, which is the national patron saint of Wales Day, there is a contest called the Eisteddfod, which is a big musical, like poetic artist celebration that generally crowns a bard at the end of it. So having a bard-based name also kind of works as well. Shiny Applin. There is actually a part of me that's considered holding onto this just as an Applin, so that I can then later evolve it into Diplin and Hydrapple. Because I do think Hydrapple is such a cool Pokemon, and I think it probably is my favourite of the 3 potential Applin evolutions. But also, Applin is, in its base form, it is such a weak Pokemon, and I don't want to just have this on my team for the sake of it. I do actually want to use it as part of my team, so I am going to evolve it after this. Although I am also going to have to find the apple for that first, and I'm not 100% sure where I do that, so that's going to be my next priority. While it doesn't fit much with the visual depiction of the red dragon, I plan on using a sweet apple to bake this Applin into an Appleton. Sweet apples are version exclusive to Shield, but they only spawn on an island in the wild area, which we can't reach yet without the ability to travel on water. Fortunately, there's a boy in Hammerlock who wants an Applin to impress his crush, and if we let him borrow our shiny, he'll give us a sweet apple for our trouble. The original myth of the Welsh dragon is about a warlord trying to build a castle on a hill to escape the Saxons, but every morning the foundations they laid yesterday have been destroyed. A young boy, who may have also been Merlin, tells the warlord that 2 rampaging dragons live under the hill he's building on, and their fighting is making the ground unstable. The warlord has the hill excavated, and 2 dragons burst out from within. A white dragon that represents the Saxons, who is then slain by a red dragon, representing the native Welsh Celts. A similar story from the 13th century has the dragons still fighting, and the powerful cry of the red dragon is causing a plague across the country, withering crops and striking terror into the hearts of the Britons. To stop the fighting, the king digs a pit at the exact spot where he knows the dragons will fall from the sky after tiring themselves out. The pit was also filled with mead, which the dragons then drink before falling into a deep sleep, allowing them to be sealed away beneath the same hill from the original legend. While I can't imagine Appleton causing famine and madness with its voice, I can definitely picture it drinking a lot of cider and taking a big nap. At this point, I'm going to take a brief detour back into the Isle of Armor. I only came here for the Mark Charm the first time around, but this time I'm actually going to start my training at the Master Dojo. And as I was talking to Avery, I actually noticed a pretty funny detail that I've never seen pointed out before. It's almost impossible to see it normally, but the ticket machines in the train station have a symbol of a card with a shelder on it, and that's because in London you can buy train tickets with something called an Oyster card. Despite the fact that very few people are ever going to see this, and even fewer are going to understand what it means, I really appreciate that someone thought to make that joke. After chasing down Slowpoke and foraging for mushrooms, you gain the ability to unlock a Pokemon's Gigantamax form with Max Soup. Max mushrooms will now appear around the Isle of Armor after beating Max raids, and we're going to need 3 mushrooms for each Pokemon we want to Gigantamax. Currently that's going to be Appleton, Colossal, Corviknight, and one more target I have planned for later. So while I grind enough raids to make Max Soup for all of them, I might as well mention my overall thoughts on the expansion pass. Linking back to the previous point of discussion, both of the DLC areas function in the same way as the wild area, but the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra are both a marked improvement on the original. These areas feature much more interesting terrain to explore, with features such as caves, beaches, and cliffs that give the land more structure to navigate through, as opposed to the wild area being mostly a flat field. You also get the option of having your Pokemon walk around with you, a feature that people had been begging for the return of since Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And of course, these areas also add a lot more content and story to the game, in addition to featuring more returning Pokemon. The Isle of Armor adds several quality of life features for team building, such as new tutor moves, discounted vitamins, resetting EVs, and of course, the ability to add or remove Gmax factor with Max Suit. Meanwhile, the main feature of the Crown Tundra is the Dynamax Adventure, a cooperative game mode where you can catch a wide range of Pokemon with boosted shiny odds, including almost every legendary and Ultra Beast. Coincidentally, Blue Vector's Dynamax Weekend also happened around this time, so I had an excuse to do some side hunting here as well. Oh! Shiny Trevenant. That's actually pretty cool actually, because I've been using that as my harvest Pokemon. Okay, regular Jellicent, regular Scyther, regular Munchlax. Ooh! Shiny Tapu Lele. Awesome. I was just about to maybe call it for the day, because I wasn't feeling like I was getting anywhere, but Tapu Lele. Awesome. I don't have any kind of Welsh justification for this one. I just wanted to hunt this because this is the only place you can actually shiny hunt it. Sword and Shield was the first generation of Pokemon games to release paid downloadable content, and seeing how Scarlet and Violet follows suit, it would seem like this is going to be the model going forward, as opposed to releasing a third version title like Platinum or Emerald. Although, as someone who didn't buy Sword or Shield at launch, I guess it would have been cheaper for me if there was a third version I could have picked up instead, so this model might not be perfect for everyone. Without the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra, I wouldn't have put nearly as many hours into my copy of Sword as I have to date, but that's more a commentary on the base postgame. After finishing the epilogue and catching your box legendary, it seems they expected players to just battle against Dynamax raid dens for postgame content. In 2019, this would have been supplemented with frequent events to release Gigantamax forms or boosted shiny raids, but without those events being run anymore, the wild area has lost much of its postgame appeal. The end of service event did make Gigantamax forms permanently accessible in raid dens, but with the Isle of Armor already having Max Soup, and the Dynamax lair featuring Gigantamax Pokemon with boosted shiny rates, there's little reason left to actually grind these Gmax raid dens aside from items and experience candy. With the style card we got from Avery, we unlock a few new options for clothing, including this cool Gigantamax Appleton shirt, or maybe it's Gigantamax Flapple. Either way, after a quick outfit change, it's time to do some archaeology for our fifth target. While I've brought up a few examples already, for this segment I want to take a better look at the decks itself, and how many of them connect to the identity of Britain. Obviously there are a few that stand out as exceedingly British. Poltergeist, Stonjourner, Cinderace and Galarian Weezing likely need no further explanation, as well as Nickit, Cramorant and Squovit standing in for some of the common wildlife. Reflavouring Zigzagoon into a badger was also a clever use of a regional form, since we don't have raccoons here in the UK. I also have a strong suspicion that Rillaboom is based on a chocolate advert that featured a gorilla playing the drum riff from In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, which might sound insane, but trust me, anyone who was living in the UK in the early 2000s remembers this advert. I also have to give acknowledgement to Yamper for being based on the Welsh Corgi, and while I'm not the biggest fan of Pikachu clones, Morpeko gets to claim some British heritage by potentially being inspired by the story of Jekyll and Hyde. Several Pokemon in the Galar decks also pay homage not to the identity of Britain itself, but to other cultures that shaped or were shaped by it. Phalanx, for example, represents the Roman occupation of Britain, while Berserker seems to reference the brief period where Vikings conquered part of England, and Cufant and Copperaja likely represent the UK's historical ties with India. There are some that I don't really see a solid British connection for, such as Sandaconda and Ice-Q, but that's not to say that I don't like these Pokemon. I just mean that I can't see anything in their design or their lore that would directly connect them to real-world Britain, which is also not a bad thing either. Other regions in the past have often included Pokemon based on completely different cultures, such as Unova having legendaries based on Chinese cosmology and philosophy, while the Kalos legendaries are instead based on the Norse legend of the Yggdrasil. If anything, I'm glad that not every single Pokemon in Galar is a walking stereotype about the UK. I'd much rather have Galarian Darmanitan than a baked bean or a double-decker bus Pokemon, and if I could have found any reasonable justification to put Clobberpuss on this team, I just might have done it. Clobberpuss is a perfect boy and I will hear nothing to the contrary. Speaking of Norse mythology, the next target I'm after is also another that seems to draw inspiration from the Viking period of English history, and might be a familiar face to those who watched my last Dream Team quest, although this time we'll be catching the Galarian form. Cofagrigus is another Pokemon that doesn't quite match the culture of Unova, obviously being based on ancient Egyptian burial rites. but Runerigus is instead based on the Scandinavian Viking practice of runestones, large slabs that were engraved and painted to honour the memory and deeds of significant people. While they're mostly found in Sweden, the Vikings left runestones in many of the places they travelled, although not many survive today. It's possible that there could have been several runestones left in England that were later destroyed by the church for being considered pagan, but there are several runestones that are still standing in the Hebrides and the Isle of Man. There are also several runestones in Sweden that were raised to celebrate the Vikings who travelled to Britain, those that returned victorious, and those wandering spirits that never came home. While Runerigus doesn't appear to be based on any one stone in particular, I imagine these are very likely what it takes inspiration from, seeing as they're mostly carved on light-coloured stones with red pigmentation, and feature prominent serpent head motifs on their runic bands. Oh god, there's Scropy on this route. Oh no. Oh no, I gotta be very careful not to run into the grass here. I didn't realise that. Ooh, shiny Yamask. Okay, that was a pretty fast one. 566 encounters, okay. I was fully prepared for my luck to have run out on the first few hunts, and each one was just going to be, you know, in the 3000s, 4000s. But okay, I'll definitely take a 500 encounter phase. Let's go. Okay, I was kind of absent-mindedly looking at this one. I don't think it was a brilliant encounter, and that's good because after Roly-Coly, I made sure to actually look up what egg moves this could potentially have. And as it turns out, the only egg move that Galarian Yamask can have is Memento. So I've had to very carefully choose my leading Pokemon for this. So I've got Taunt here just in case I run into a Brilliant. And I've also had to pick a flying type because this area is just full of Trapinch and Doug Trio with Arena Trap. The only problem is I can't False Swipe it because it's a Ghost type. But I think the catch rate is pretty decent. I think I can just start chucking balls at it. I do want to wait and see one of its other animations first though, because I hadn't noticed this before until I started hunting it. But there's a pretty cool animation it does where it feels like it's trying to pull itself out of the stone that it's bound to, which is kind of an interesting interpretation of it being unwillingly connected to this rock instead of, you know, regular Unnovan Yamask that seems to be willingly holding its own mask. Come on, stop showing me Corvus Ware. Show me the Yamask again. Yeah, there we go, that's it. Wasn't the best shot of it, but you see what I mean. It's trying to pull itself out of the rock, which is... Yeah, so again, there we go. Alright, let's catch this. There we go. Shiny Galarian Yamask. It said this Pokemon was formed when an ancient clay tablet was drawn to a vengeful spirit. Alright. I'm going to guess Brave for this one. I have already hunted an Alpha Shiny of this one in ZA, because obviously I had to do that when it was added in the DLC. But it would be cool to have a marked one to distinguish it from the Alpha one. So let's see, what nature we got. Oh, Adamant. That's pretty cool, actually. Runerigus is slightly more physically offensive, although it is mostly just a defensive Pokemon. So I'm probably going to try and teach this one Body Press to make the most of that. Alright, do we have a mark, though? Please have a cool personality mark. Oh, whoa, we do! Wait, what is that? The Driven, pumped up. Oh, that is cool, yes. We got one with a personality mark that was actually a target. Dingeld the Driven. That is perfect. Alright, now we gotta show off the mark. Regular Galarian Yamask. Shiny marked Galarian Yamask. I love the colours on this shiny so much. Like the blue tealish coloured eye, the accentuated bright purple lines on the stone. It just works so nicely. I love this little guy. And of course now I'm going to have to do the somewhat convoluted method of actually evolving it. So that's gonna be fun. Runerigus is one of my favourite Pokemon from Galar, and I'm so pumped that this shiny has a personality mark. While the chance of finding the rare mark is 1 in 350 with the Mark Charm, the odds of getting a single specific personality mark is closer to 1 in 1000, and since Galarian Yamask can't be hunted in Scarlet and Violet, the chance of any other shiny Yamask having this same mark is very slim. I also love how strange and obscure the evolution method is. While Unovan Yamask evolves into Cofagrigus at level 34, Galarian Yamask will only evolve after taking 49 points of damage, before passing under a very specific stone arch in the wild area. While I did say that most of my team was going to be related to Welsh heritage in some way, I don't have a solid connection for Runerigus. Allegedly, the Vikings actually faced heavy resistance from the Welsh, and never managed to establish any known territory in Wales. Like many cultures, the Celts also carved words and patterns into stones, but I mostly wanted to hunt Runerigus because I think it's a cool Pokemon and an awesome shiny. As for why it was included in the Galar Dex, I think this Pokemon represents more than just Viking influence. While Runerigus takes the form of a fragmented but completed runestone, Galarian Yamask starts out by only holding a small piece of it, much like how many pieces of archaeological interest can be found all over the British Isles. Many Welsh castles, such as Cardiff Castle for example, were built on the remains of Roman fortifications, and 14 years ago the remains of King Richard III were even discovered under a car park in Leicester. And while the nearby town of Stow-on-Side is a bit of a departure from British aesthetics, it does seem to embody this idea of Britain and Galar both being built atop centuries of archaeological history, much like how the ancient mural was actually built over an even more ancient monument of historical significance. After EV training my new slab and evolving Corviknight, it's time to take on the 4th gym. This will actually be my first time battling Alistair, as along with Melody and Sir Chester, these gym leaders are exclusive to Shield version. This isn't the first time they've done version-exclusive gym leaders, as the opposite gym in Univert is run by Drayden in Black version and Iris in White. Although aside from genders and abilities, their teams are practically identical. Meanwhile, the Stow-on-Side gym leader is a fighting specialist in Sword and a Ghost-type user in Shield, meaning this battle is a completely new experience for me. For some reason, getting the 4th badge gives you a 3rd star on your league card, despite only just getting our 2nd star for beating the 3rd gym. But we have found 2 more targets since then, so I suppose it's time for an update while we prepare for our final hunt. Although we first have to see what Bede is doing with the ancient mural. A common critique I've seen levelled at modern Pokemon games is that your rivals are too friendly, which makes you feel bad about battling them. X and Y was the peak of this sentiment, giving you 4 different rivals who are basically just punching bags that periodically ask you to beat them up to advance the story. Meanwhile, the original rivals in Kanto and Johto are often held up as the gold standard for what a rival should be. They were total jerks that would actively try and hinder your progress, and would often ambush you at the most inconvenient moments for a difficult battle, which in turn made defeating them a cathartic experience. Sun and Moon seemed to acknowledge this sentiment, and decided to try a new formula, with one rival continuing to act as a competitive but friendly sycophant, and the other being a brooding, edgy, and borderline antagonistic force that barely wants anything to do with you. And of these 2 concepts, it was naturally the latter that became the favourite rival of Generation 7. Walking into Gladion's hotel room and him straight up telling you to get out is one of the funniest interactions in the entire series. And in Sword and Shield, Bede was their next attempt at bringing back the antagonistic rival. While Gladion was angsty and distant, Bede carries himself with an air of smug superiority, and actively gets in your way several times during the story, talking down on everyone around him and even getting into Hop's head about living up to his brother's reputation. Not to mention that he's clearly up to no good gathering wishing stars for the chairman, giving him both the shady ulterior motives of Silver and the annoying attitude of Blue. But when it comes to evoking the true essence of the original rival, I actually think that Leon does it better. Obviously, Leon himself isn't an antagonist, but I believe the game inherently understands that it's being way over the top with just how much they hype him up. The first 10 minutes of the game is spent practically beating you over the head with the following facts. A. Leon is the champion. B. He is the undefeated champion. C. He has a Charizard, which is unbeatable. And, most important of all, and you really cannot forget this, D. He is the champion. There's no way this isn't being done intentionally. They know exactly what they're doing. I mean, he is literally walking around in public wearing a cape and a crown. There is no subtlety to this man, and to be frank, I kinda love it. Every mention of Leon being unbeatable and the greatest champion ever just makes it all that more satisfying when you finally do get to defeat him. The last time I remember actually being that emotionally invested in the downfall of the champion is when I was 5 years old and facing off against my rival in Fire Red. With a new outfit and a redesigned trainer card, it's finally time for one last shiny hunt. As we approach Borlundly, we have to pass through the Grimwood Tangle, which is one of my favourite set pieces in the Galar region, and my go-to location whenever I need to make a campsite. Before the release of Sword and Shield, there was a 24-hour Trailcam livestream of this location to tease the reveal of the Shield-exclusive Galarian Ponyta. And while I do like this Pokemon for representing the national animal of Scotland, it's not the target I'm going for. For the final member of this team, I'm hunting a different Pokemon that showed up on the livestream to prank the viewers, Impidimp. Hatterene and Grimmsnarl are generally considered to be counterparts that embody the dichotomy of witches in folklore. Hatterene is the Good Witch, representing the archetypes of benevolent magical women who appear as healers and spiritual guides, much like Morgan Le Fay of Arthurian legend, a character who is also derived from ancient Welsh mythology. Meanwhile, Grimmsnarl has all of the classic descriptors of a crone, with green skin, tangled hair and a large pointed nose. But in this case, these traits have instead been incorporated into an ogre. This dichotomy is also similar to two kinds of Welsh fairies, the Ychlachlon and the Gwychion, with the former being described as benevolent and helpful elves, and the latter being equated to hags that stalk the mountains. Despite what we saw on the trail cam, Impidimp actually doesn't appear as a normal encounter in Glimwood Tangle. There is a 20% chance of finding Morgrem as a random encounter, but Impidimp only appears by interacting with a few specific mushrooms around the forest. Unfortunately, this encounter type is unable to have wild marks, but seeing how Applin went, I'd rather end this quest with a nice, easy soft reset that definitely won't go massively over odds. Okay, first off I need to test if this is actually soft resettable. Because this whole cutscene interacting with Impidimp here, it does take a few seconds. And so does leaving the area by bike and coming back. So I think maybe it would be faster if I can soft reset, but I want to make sure that this is being rolled when you encounter it, and not when it, spawns in on the map. Level 31, Prankster, Quirky, Strong-Willed. Different ability, yeah, different IVs, different nature. Okay, we can soft reset. That's good. This should be probably still going to take some time though, soft resetting, but faster than having to go in and out, I think. Okay, for the sake of understanding what's about to happen, I need to come in and narrate my thought process. For the last month, I had been putting in an average of 500 encounters a day to look for this Impidimp with no success. In terms of recorded encounters, this is officially the longest shiny hunt I've ever done. Before this, it was 12,900 for a Tatoga, which was half as likely to be shiny. This Impidimp has a 1 in 4,096 chance to be shiny, which puts me 3.5 times over the expected odds. I know for a fact that this hunt is possible by soft resetting, but at this point, I was getting desperate, and doubt had been seeping in ever since I passed 10,000. But at the same time, I also didn't want to switch up how I'd been hunting it, because then I would feel like the last month had been wasted. I needed this shiny to be a soft reset to confirm that I wasn't crazy. Just on the off chance there was some logical reason why I hadn't found the shiny yet, I decided to try something different. I considered that maybe the Impidimp could never be shiny the first time you encountered it, and I wanted to eliminate that possibility. So for this encounter, I was going to KO the Impidimp, leave the area, come back, and then save before continuing to soft reset, just to remove any doubt that I was somehow doing this hunt incorrectly. No way! Okay, I've been doing this for like a month, and I just had this crazy thought of like, oh, what if I just knock out the Impidimp and I see another one? Because I've just been resetting. I don't know why I thought that would make a difference. I don't think it did make a difference. I think I just happened to finally find the shiny. But oh my god. Oh, I'm finally done. This has been hell for like a month. Ah, oh, thank you. I'm finally done. I can leave this godforsaken forest. Oh, I'm getting emotional. It's like 10 PM, but I don't care. I'm glad I stayed on doing this extra late. I just needed it to be done. 14,398. This has been so rough. But it's finally here. Oh, just look at that beautiful blue color. Come on, bring it back around. There it is. Man, that is so good. I kind of wish it kept that colour as a Grimmsnarl, but also the white and purple is also pretty cool. And that's the dream team done. Oh man. Unfortunately, there's no chance to mark check this because it's a static encounter, it's a weird thing, it doesn't get to have marks. But we can still check, I guess, ability and nature. Because it would be pretty cool if this thing got Prankster, since that's, like, the whole thing it does. It sneaks into people's homes, stealing things and feasting on the negative energy of the frustrated occupants. I mean, I am... This has been an extremely frustrating hunt. This Impidim's just been feeding off me all month. Okay, I'm gonna guess... I mean, it's gotta be Impish nature, right? It's... Okay, it's not Prankster. It's a bit of a shame. But we can always fix that later. And it's special attack up, special defense down. What nature is that? Rash nature. Okay. And of course, no marks. Alright. I can finally move on. I can finally finish this quest. I was this close to setting up my copy of Swords and double hunting this. I was going to do that tomorrow because I was getting so sick of just being here. But I'm glad my perseverance paid off. Just look at that. If you've ever done shiny hunting in Sword and Shield, you might have heard the terms Star Shiny and Square Shiny. Currently, this is only a feature in Sword and Shield, but some shinies will have star sparkles and others have square sparkles, and the chance of getting either one depends on how you encountered it. For wild encounters, the chance of getting star sparkles is absurdly low, less than 1 in 4,000. And I don't mean 1 in 4,000 encounters, I mean 1 in 4,000 shinies. But for other methods such as hatching eggs, static encounters and Dynamax raids, the chance of getting a star shiny is much more common, with square shinies being 1 in 16. This Impidimp is considered a static encounter, which is why it can't have wild marks, so in this case, finding a square shiny would have actually been rarer than stars. There's still a lot of misinformation on the odds of star and square shinies, but if you want to know the exact details, friend of the channel Sir Toasty Toes recently did a video breaking down everything you might need to know about them, which saves me from having to do it here. Thanks Toasty. Anyway, back to Impidimp. One of my other reasons for wanting to use Grimmsnarl is because I've been conditioned to dislike it. By all means, I should love Grimmsnarl. It's got a great design, interesting lore, and an incredible shiny colour, as well as a unique type combination, a strong move pool, and a powerful support ability. Which means every time I face it in an online battle, I want to pull my own skin off. This Pokemon lives up to its lore as a troublemaker, by being one of the most infuriating pranksters to play against. With access to Light Screen, Reflect, Thunderwave, Scary Face, Taunt, Trick, and even Fake Out. Not to mention its dark typing makes it immune to the status effects of other pranksters, meaning most teams are unable to taunt it and stop it from doing whatever it wants. And after facing it so many times on the ranked ladder, even seeing it in the team lineup gives me an overwhelming sense of dread and irritation. But if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of weird little dark-type goblin Pokemon, so I thought perhaps raising a shiny Grimmsnarl of my own would help me overcome my negative association. I've got to be honest though, taking this many encounters to show up isn't getting us off to a great start. As for the name I gave it, it might sound a bit familiar, since it was also given to a character that recently debuted in Legend ZA. While it isn't directly confirmed, I think Gwyn and her brother might be from the Galar region. It feels significant that Ivor's Ace is the only Galarian Pokemon in the entire game before the DLC, and I've seen his battle theme described as sounding like it belongs in Sword and Shield. There's also an NPC randomly talking about a pesky Galarian, and given his reputation in Lumio City, I'm just going to assume they're talking about Ivor. Gwyn is also the Welsh word for white or pure, which likely isn't a coincidence, since Ivor is most likely derived from ivory, and both of their names carry the same meanings in Japanese. And based on this Welsh connection, Gwyn's name could also be in reference to Gwyn ap Nudd. In Welsh mythology, he is the ruler of Annwn, a spiritual realm equivalent to the afterlife, with some tales placing him in the role of a Psychopomp or a Reaper, which would be a fitting connection for Gwyn as a Ghost-type trainer. And while the colour white is a good description of shiny Grimmsnarl, Gwyn ap Nudd is also the king of the fairy folk, and has been described as a powerful and imposing warrior. While Grimmsnarl is the final piece of my Welsh dream team, we do still have a few gyms left to finish up the story, as well as a few more things I wanted to talk about. As I briefly mentioned before hunting for Applin, I think the routes and towns were overlooked when it came to conversations about the game's art style and design. They also cover a very broad range of towns you might find across the UK. From the rural countryside villages like Postwick, industrial towns like Motorstoke, seaside ports like Hulbury, and towns built around prominent historical architecture like Hammerlock and Circhester. These towns have a certain quality to them that I can't describe in any way other than quintessentially British. Even the public litter bins look just like the ones you find in most of the UK. I don't know why this detail sticks out to me in particular, but it's a nice touch. As for why they sheared Wales off of the map, I still don't really understand that decision. At least Scotland got to stay and become the Crown Tundra, but without Wales or any part of England further south than London, it makes Galar feel too rectangular and compact, especially within its official artwork, and I think having some more asymmetrical width would have helped. But during my initial research for this video, I was finding claims that Wales was not in fact forgotten in the Galar region, and that Spikemuth was in fact based on the Welsh seaside town of Llandudno. Unfortunately, to put it lightly, Spikemuth is a dump, and if this is how they chose to represent the entirety of Wales, I think it's frankly more insulting than just being forgotten. But as far as I can tell, the only real connection is that Spikemuth is roughly where the north of Wales would be, since Galar is upside down. But not every town in Galar is close to its real-world counterpart. The giant geoglyph in Turfield is based on one that appears in Dorset, and the stone pillars around the town are evidently inspired by Stonehenge, both of which are south of London, and therefore should be north of Windon. The same goes for Circhester, which is inspired by the architecture and Roman spars found in the town of Bath, which should also be further to the north. So geographically, Spikemuth's location means very little, and since the only landmarks in Spikemuth are delinquents and poverty, that doesn't really narrow it down much either. In that sense, I think Spikemuth is not based on any one town in particular. It's a general representation of the areas in the UK that have been neglected and run down. This is honestly a good concept for a town, and I feel like they could have explored this idea as a consequence of the energy crisis, since Spikemuth went into decline thanks to the popularity of Dynamax battles. I do wish it was more than just a corridor though. Also, I'm still going to pretend that Piers and Marnie have Welsh accents.
That was your last chance.
Yeah? What are you gonna do about it? If you're the best England's got to offer, then God help you.
I'm Welsh.
Speaking of the story and the energy crisis, I am willing to admit that this isn't the strongest part of Sword and Shield. Specifically this part, with the rogue Dynamax Pokemon suddenly appearing around the region. This is a really awesome moment that establishes just what the original Darkest Day might have looked like, and raises the stakes before the final appearance of Eternatus. Or at least, it could have been if they actually let us see it. The best we get is a photo of Leon standing next to a rotated Dynamax Berserker, while several NPCs tell us how something really cool is happening off-screen. In the past, Pokemon games have been jokingly critiqued for making children deal with organised crime and world-ending disasters, but Sword and Shield proves that while it might be smart to let the adults handle things, it doesn't make for interesting gameplay when you aren't the adult. Now that we have our 7th badge, we also get another star for our League card, meaning it's time for one more redesign before we take on Raihan for a place in the championship. I still have a few more small things that I wanted to mention that didn't really fit anywhere else in the script, so I'm just going to rapid fire through them until we get to the last segment. Pokemon camps. This feature is really awesome. I love any mechanic that lets you interact with your Pokemon beyond just battling with them, and the campsite feels like it pulls inspiration from both Pokemon and Me and My Pokemon Ranch, since you can just leave the camp open and watch as your Pokemon play around together. I think the presentation and level of interactions you can have at campsites is far superior to the version we get in Scarlet and Violet, even if it lacks the mechanical benefits of sandwich making. World building. It's easy to overlook just how much graphic design went into making Galar feel real, so I want to draw your attention to it. Within Sword and Shield, there are over 60 different corporations with their own unique logos. These are mainly used for the Pokejob mechanic, but you can also see them scattered around the region, appearing on the side of pitches and displayed on the uniforms of gym trainers they're sponsoring. Some logos are obviously Pokemon flavoured, like Wailord Aquaculture and Galar Taxi, but many of them feel like they could be logos for genuinely real companies. Special shout out to Arceus Laboratories, because no research lab should ever embrace the idea that they are playing God, let alone make it their entire brand. I also want you to take a moment to guess which Pokemon represents the Galar Police Department. In the history of the franchise, police and security guards have been heavily associated with canine Pokemon, such as Growlithe or Herdier, so naturally, the Galar Police Department are represented by none other than Grapploct. This actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it, since Grapploct would be well suited to catching and detaining criminals, and it certainly embodies the idiom of the long arm of the law. It also works as a thematic counterpart to Octillery, which symbolises the fire department. It's just a shame there isn't some kind of Dr. Octopus to represent the Pokemon Center. Quality of life. While the difficulty level of modern Pokemon games is a contentious topic, I'm never going to complain about quality of life making the experience more streamlined. It's honestly crazy that for 7 generations you had to track down a single random NPC in the region to do basic tasks like deleting moves, remembering old ones, or renaming your own Pokemon. But now all of those features have been consolidated to a separate counter at the Pokemon Center. My favourite quality of life feature has to be accessing your boxes from your party though. I know that Let's Go did this first, but I'm still going to give credit to Sword and Shield for setting the precedent for this in the mainline games. The same goes for visible overworld encounters, although this quest would have been done a lot faster if they still let you see shinies. Gym challenges. Following their absence in Generation 7, I really do appreciate that gyms came back strong in Sword and Shield. I know I said it already, but the aesthetic of gym battles taking place in a giant stadium is amazing, and I love how you can hear the crowd chanting in the gym theme, or how they go nuts every time someone begins to Dynamax. I also like the creativity of the challenges, which even extend to the battles for the last few badges. Getting stat boosts by underestimating the gym leader's age to flatter her is a very funny mechanic, while Piers forces you to battle without relying on Dynamax, and instead of using a type specialization, Raihan challenges you to a double battle with a weather-based team. Speaking of teams, I love that Oleana's team is full of Pokemon that are associated with femininity and beauty, only to reveal that her ace Pokemon is a Garbodor. I could do a deep dive into Oleana and theorise about how this is a reflection of her personality, her motives, or even a deep-seated insecurity about her own self-perception, despite her clear efforts to present as a glamorous businesswoman. But I think they just did it because it was funny. Aside from Melmetal, this is also the only Pokemon not from Galar or Kanto to get a Gigantamax form, so it's very possible that it only exists because they wanted to do this gag. 10 out of 10, no notes. As we reach the final stretch of the story, I think it's finally time to give my thoughts on the characterization and motives of one of the most disliked villains in Pokemon history. The CEO of Macrocosmos and the architect behind the Darkest Day, Chairman Rose. Rose hijacking the tournament is an element of the story that gets criticised a lot, and I agree the narrative could have handled it a bit better. The energy crisis is 1,000 years away, and Rose can't even wait a few hours for the champion tournament to finish before pulling the trigger, which only ends up jeopardising his entire plan. I've seen many different attempts to rewrite this climax or change Rose's motivations to make it more logical. An easy fix I've seen people make is to simply change the deadline for Galar's energy crisis. 1,000 years is a comically long time, and if the Galar particles were instead going to run out within a month or even a year, then Rose's impatience might have seemed more justified. But after all, Rose is the villain in this story. Not every villain has to be rational or secretly justified, and during your meeting in Hulbury, he does make it clear that he doesn't like waiting around when something can be done immediately, evidently foreshadowing his approach to the Darkest Day. But I want to propose 2 different theories about Rose's character that provide new context to his actions, without having to change or rewrite anything. For those of you who want Rose to have more depth to his motivations, there is an element of his backstory to be considered. In the post-game, Oleana tells you that Rose started out working in a coal mine. As I alluded to during my roly-coly hunt, working in any kind of mine is an extremely dangerous and demanding job, and while the Pokemon world is generally depicted as a more advanced and utopian society, it would have been a solid motivation for Rose's character if he'd grown up witnessing these horrible conditions firsthand during his youth. Maybe someone close to him died as a consequence of spending their life down in the mines, a friend or even a family member, and that's what motivated him to search for a permanent solution to Galar's energy needs. Maybe that's where he got the drive to climb the ladder from humble coal miner to technology conglomerate CEO, and maybe that's why he can't wait even a day longer to ensure no one else ever has to suffer working in those conditions. That no one else would ever have to watch someone they love go down into the mines and never return. That's the difference that one day would make. With the future of Galar's energy secured, no son would ever have to say that their father worked into his grave. Alright. Just gotta squeeze in here. Hi. So, I originally wrote this theory as one of the first parts of the script, because it's something that I first thought of back when I played Pokemon Sword several years ago. And as I was writing the rest of the script, I decided to look into how Rose had been portrayed in other media outside the games. And as it turns out, this is literally just the plot of Pokemon Journeys. Rose watched his father die in a mining accident when he was just a boy, and he wanted to make sure that no child ever had to suffer such a tragic loss like that again. This episode of Journeys came out a year after the games did, so maybe this was a bit of soft retconning in response to critique about Rose's character and motivations, but this could have also been planned from the start and was just cut from the game for some reason, and this reference to his past as a coal miner is all that was left of it. Either way, I can respect them adding this level of depth to his motivations. Also, I just really wanted to reference that lyric from the Proto Men, so I'm going to keep all that theory stuff in the video. I'm not cutting it out. On to the next bit. Oh, get out here. There we go. My second theory, which I'm fairly certain isn't accidentally plagiarised from the anime this time, does also require some interpretation, and instead offers a much more villainous idea of who Rose truly is. While his backstory in Journeys paints Chairman Rose as a selfless and grief-driven martyr, I think Rose in the games could also be interpreted as a character driven by ego. Someone who will do whatever it takes to be at the top, no matter how cutthroat he has to be, and someone who is willing to risk it all to leave his mark on history. In fact, I believe the Crown Tundra intended for us to better understand the character of Rose from his brother, with a tragic backstory of betrayal and jealousy that is only implied to us through League cards. You might have missed this if you never looked closely at your card album, but every League card you collect throughout the game actually has flavor text and lore if you flip them over, and the back of Peony's second League card reads as follows. Though this is seldom addressed publicly, Peony is in fact Rose's younger brother. Peony was compared to his brilliant older brother since he was born, causing him to rebel and become a delinquent. He eventually ran away from home, only to become a gym leader once his talent was recognised. He was even champion once. Yes, the goofy, lovable, adventuring dad from the Crown Tundra is actually the brother of Chairman Rose. Peony spent his childhood living in the shadow of his older brother, and was only able to get recognised once he distanced himself from his own family. And with all of his own hard work, he even made it to the rank of champion, the single strongest trainer in all of Galar, proving to the world that there was no one above him. But Peony's League card continues. He was even champion once, but shortly afterward, Rose became League chairman. This caused Peony to vanish entirely from the League. This entry paints a direct correlation between Rose taking the position of chairman and Peony no longer being the champion, or even a gym leader for that matter. How exactly this took place isn't certain. Maybe Peony stepped down because he still resented Rose for being the favourite son, and perhaps Rose only took the position to further his plans for solving the energy crisis, without any real consideration for how it might once again overshadow his own brother. But I think there is a much more malicious interpretation of these events. The Isle of Armor introduces us to another former champion, the sensei of the Master Dojo, Mustard. He became champion 50 years ago after a match with Opal, then held the title undefeated for almost 2 decades. But Mustard's rare League card gives us some very interesting information on why he finally retired. Mustard reigned undefeated until he lost his partner Pokemon. After this, his losses started to mount. He remained popular even after losing the mantle of champion, but decided to retire after the League chairman at the time asked him to win in a rigged match. While this would have been way before Rose held the position, this tells us that the League chairman has the power to arrange matches, and potentially rig them in someone's favour. We also know that Rose's plans seemed to hinge on having a champion he could use to control Eternatus, but evidently he couldn't rely on his own brother. I can't imagine Peony would agree to such a crazy idea, and it's just as likely that Rose's pride wouldn't allow him to ask for help. He needed a new champion, and he needed his brother out of the way. And that's where Leon comes in. Leon's team changes depending on which starter you pick, but 4 Pokemon remain consistent. An Aegislash with Sacred Sword, a Dragapult with Flamethrower, a Haxorus with Earthquake, and of course, his signature Gigantamax Charizard. I believe Rose sponsored Leon specifically because he was a perfect counter to the Great Steel Peony, and he may have even fixed his matches to get him to the championship undefeated, giving himself a loyal and seemingly unbeatable champion that could help him enact his plan for the Darkest Day, and get the public on his side at the same time. I don't doubt that Leon is a talented trainer in his own right, but his undefeated streak certainly raises some eyebrows. I mean, do you honestly think that Raihan couldn't beat Leon if he actually tried? He has a Gigalith that knows Stealth Rock, and his ace Gigantamax Duraludon knows Stone Edge, and we're meant to believe that he's somehow never beaten Leon's Charizard? The truth has been right in front of us this whole time. Raihan is an influencer who is sponsored by none other than Macrocosmos Banking. He is literally being paid off by the chairman to lose against Leon to boost his ego and public perception. I'm not crazy. Follow the money. But why would Rose do this? His League card says the following. Mr. Rose is in fact a talented trainer, coming in 2nd place for a past Champion Cup. I think it's very possible that he lost that Champion Cup to Peony, and his ego wouldn't let that slide. If Rose couldn't be the champion, he'd own the whole league instead. Peony is very clearly a family man. He smothers his daughters with affection, and his rare League card is a family photo with his wife, yet he never once talks about his brother. The only times their relationship is alluded to is when other characters make passing comments on their resemblance. But there is one very obscure piece of dialogue that feels poignant in this context. As part of solving the final clue in the Crown Tundra, you can show Peony any legendary Pokemon in your party, prompting a unique comment on all of them. And if you show him a Latios, he has the following to say to it. Hey, Latios mate, you're sort of like a big brother to Latias, right? Well listen, you be a proper big brother, and be good to Latias. Got it? Even without his past or his brother, Rose's core motivation is still really interesting to me, because he isn't really a villain. His goal isn't wealth or world domination or unlimited power, it's... Wait, no, yeah, it is unlimited power. Rose simply wants to ensure a future of unlimited, clean energy for the region, and beyond that, there doesn't seem to be any kind of catch or scheme. I mean, aside from the fact that he's sourcing the energy by unleashing an interdimensional alien, and banking on Leon being strong enough to put it back in the bottle, Rose isn't planning to use the energy for something sinister, or monopolise it for profit. After all, the deadline he's worried about is far beyond his own lifetime, and the arguments he makes to Leon even echo the sentiments of environmental activists. Rose is right in thinking that modern society isn't sustainable, and if we don't do something about it today, how can we guarantee that someone will do something about it tomorrow? This is a genuine, selfless effort to ensure a sustainable future for the region he loves. And to his credit, his plan actually worked. Reawakening Eternatus was all he needed to replenish the amount of Galar particles in the region, and the effect is immediately noticeable, with raid dens offering significantly more watts than before. And while Leon wasn't able to recapture Eternatus like he planned, everything still worked out in the end thanks to the two heroes. Rose is the only main Pokemon antagonist that actually achieved exactly what he wanted, and he even turns himself into the authorities after it's all over, willingly accepting whatever consequences may come, knowing that it was a small price to pay for the future. Anyway, nice Charizard nerd, check these stealth rocks. As I stated at the beginning, I went into this quest knowing that Generation 8 still has a lot of negativity around it, and I'm well aware of the complaints people have about these games. And while I'm not expecting to change anyone's mind, I hope it was at least entertaining and maybe the slightest bit educational. When I started working on this video, my main idea was to highlight the aspects of Galar that would be overlooked when viewed from a non-British perspective, or things that I felt were unfairly critiqued by the initial wave of judgment. And that then evolved into adding the whole Welsh aspect when I started planning my targets. As a result, this has been a pretty big video to make in terms of writing, researching, hunting, filming, and editing over these last few months. So it would mean a lot if you subscribed, liked the video, and left a comment with your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this type of video, definitely check out my Pokemon White badge quest if you haven't already. But for now, I'm going to let Pokopia consume my life. Thanks for watching.
That was brilliant, Candle, for me. Very much enjoyed